Hello, greetings and welcome back to Daily Driver with myself, Base Driver, here at Paine's Games, where if you enjoy the content then I invite you to leave a like and comment, share this with your friends, and most importantly hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to ensure you get notifications of my latest content. Now, first off, as we hit one whole week live on this new channel of mine, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone that has tuned in so far and weathered the few teething problems along the way. I know it's not huge numbers, but folks are watching, and you know, I always say it's better to have a few good friends than hundreds of fake ones. And please do feel free to jump into the comments and add your 2 cents. I'm keen to hear feedback on the topics and videos in general and build a bit of a community here on Paine's Games. So on to today's topic, and as I have alluded to a few times here on the channel, I'm a bit of an old geezer, okay? Though people often say, Driver, you're only in your 40s, you're not that old, and perhaps in the grand scheme of things they're right, but at the very least I've hit that stage where it is ever more apparent in conversations with peers, clients and colleagues that I'm talking about subjects and instances for which those to whom I am conversing have absolutely no point of reference. A good example might be any given obscure Family Guy or Simpsons reference which, at time of their original airing in the 90s or 2000s, was already obscure enough, but by now is so far removed from the current generation's experience base that it becomes entirely moot. Now, having said that, I'm not one to chastise them for not being aware of such things, and Lord knows I've seen it happen in conversations between others for time immemorial. Instead, I like to take into account that these people perhaps weren't actually born at the time, and as time goes on, that stretches from years to decades. I mean, there are people at the top of their game right now, content creators, journalists, developers, for example, who were born in 1999 or later. Now, this is also not to assume anyone hasn't done their research or through familial or friend groups learned of things from before their time, so to speak, but there's definitely something to be said for the benefit of recollections from those with contemporary first-hand experience. Now, my father died last year, and over the course of the past year, my aunt and just last week my uncle have both sadly passed away too. Between them all, that's 200 combined years of life experiences that are all now lost, other than that which those of us left behind carry with us as memories. So I guess I'm trying to say we older folk need to take more time to listen to and discuss our experiences with the next generations, lest the same mistakes are made again. A low-level example of which is what I have dubbed Grubby, a tale of 2 Jeffs. So gather round, grab some s'mores, and join me for a tale of the good old days of gaming journalism from the mid-90s to the early 2000s, access journalism, and corporate media hegemony. We begin in the present with some comments from David Jaffe's interview with Alyssa McCunty earlier this week. Let me just play this short segment to you, which I'll try to skip to the most relevant points, and I do apologise in advance for their language.
Yeah, and I think that it's tough in this industry, right? I've experienced it at Kotaku. You can very easily get cut off from contact with these studios. Kotaku and Nintendo have not gotten any, there's been no relationship there for years. And
what was the straw that broke?
I think this was before my time there, at least game fans before it came out.
Oh, okay. And that turned people on to go do that, and they got upset. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's been belly up ever since. And then I think there was an example of how difficult that line is, because I think there is value in people pointing to how sometimes some outlets, and Kotaku would very openly deride them, are just mouthpieces they're just PR times 2. They're just, this game looked good because look good, and that's a lot of the mid-level game sites. Some of the ones are very pro company.
IGN is the same. I like IGN in the same way I like, People magazine, right? I mean, it's got access, it's fun, but I don't go to it expecting anything other than the total, surface previews, which is great. They do a great job of that. But yeah, that's not where I go.
Sometimes some of their stuff, social media stuff, I'll see it, and that often has to do with oh God, why can't it sponsor content stuff? Which always has to be delineated that it's sponsored content, but sometimes it can be a little, I think they had a few military sponsored things where we were but they have some and it gets, I think maybe people forget, but like some of their reporting is incredible. Like the
Oh,
Rebecca
yeah, no.
Beltran reporting that she did for Game Science and Black Myth Wukong, which has gotten her so much shit. That was
I didn't know she was. I thought she was a GameSpot. No, she was.
No.
That's Lucy James. Was it GameSpot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Rebs is out IGN. So there
Okay.
is, you know, there are excellent reporters there. But what I mean is like there are a lot of sites, and I wouldn't necessarily put them in there, that are just like mouthpieces. And I think there are people in the games industry, or at least game fans, who see that and they're like, fuck the access media. You know,
Yeah.
I don't trust any of this shit. And I understand them. I understand that frustration. There is a line that is so tough to toe where you do want to push, but also, you know, Totillo, Schreier, those guys push, but they can push because you cannot blackball aggressively Totillo and Schreier because
Okay, so here we have Alyssa commenting on the nature of access media, and I did briefly touch on this in my backseat driver watch along and yesterday's daily driver, as it does rather conveniently tie in with today's topic, for which I was already preparing. In case you didn't catch it, she was relaying her cursory experience of the access media and the danger, as she puts it, of pushing back against anything because you'll lose your access, by which she means free review codes, invites to cushy game events, expos, conferences, etc., access to industry bots for interviews and so forth. Which could obviously put a big dent in any aspiring journalist's career aspirations, of course, and this has been a rumbling hot topic of the gaming news for quite a while now, with the particular instances of withdrawal of access at Kotaku mentioned in an interview by Alyssa occurring in 2015 to 2016, as we can see here. In this article, saying you're going to get fewer early game reviews from everyone. And this is a decade ago now, crikey. This is still fresh in my memory, but then for anyone over 40, everything was only a decade ago. To summarise, with regard to Bethesda, they pulled access not just from Kotaku Mind, but ostensibly due to badly received reviews in the run-up to their releases. They wanted to quell all dissent rather than fix the issues and market a solid title. And in the case of Nintendo, Alyssa quite rightly points out that Kotaku posted an ill-advised article relaying that Metroid Dread worked on emulators, then posted a bunch of leaks for Tears of the Kingdom out of spite of being denied access. The thing is, this is nothing new. In fact, this sort of thing has been going on forever, to varying degrees in both directions and all sorts of fields. Take, for example, the BBC banning Sex Pistols from Radio 1, if I just get rid of that pop-up there. Or Nirvana from Top of the Pops. And more recently, the 2024 Christmas #1. Now, these are examples of blocking access of the artist to the medium. In the context of video games back in the 90s here in the UK, we had a fantastic show under the name of Games Master. Now, it was definitely non-ironically edgy, irreverent, and also the most popular gaming-related show on UK TV. And yes, there were others, such as Bad Attitude and so on. Sorry, Bad Influence, Bad Attitude. Anyway, this show featured reviews by many of the print media journalists of the time from magazines such as CVG, Mean Machines, and PC Gamer. Journalists such as Dave Perry, marketing manager Dave Perry, he was quite insistent about that at the end, as I remember. Now, I recall presenter of the show Dominic Diamond once relaying instances where, because the nature of your show, you have to understand, was pretty racy for 6 PM on Channel 4, but instances whereby they had been denied code or hardware for the show. So, you know what the producers did? They went out and sourced it, bought it, borrowed it, or whatever, and did it anyway. I'm fairly certain they ran afoul of it more than once. At one point, their shenanigans lost them a huge McDonald's deal. Nonetheless, they didn't kowtow and pushed ahead to give gamers an honest review, even if that review was, it sucked. The point is, it happened there, and it was also a frequent occurrence across the magazines from which the show sourced its guest reviewers, and had been for long before then. The key difference being they didn't cry and wail about it, they just sourced the content another way, and then masterfully wrangled the notoriety it gained them into further success. Interesting too that PC Gamer would feature the writers, their own writers, as guests on this show, as one former PC Gamer writer would go on to Digital Foundry, which may become slightly pertinent later on. So, pop that under your cap. As we move forward to the halcyon days of 2004, oh my god. 21 years, where has the time gone? You see, back then I was running my own music-oriented web TV and shoutcast radio stations, and whenever we weren't live ourselves, we were watching GameSpot, who were also mentioned in the Jaffe McCante interview earlier. Now, these were truly great times. We were all pioneering a new form of video delivery, and honestly, the relative democratization of internet media at the time had made way for a generation of reviewers and critics who had credibility and more stature among their audience. Most of all, they still had some integrity and backbones. GameSpot absolutely rode the waves of this new delivery system to huge success, generating genuinely compelling appointment TV that saw great viewing numbers across the globe, particularly considering the time period and internet infrastructure. That is up until 2007, when the access media struck. To quote Rod Serling, case in point, Paine and Lynch, dead men. This game from IO Interactive and IDOS Interactive was sponsoring GameSpot at the time, with the GameSpot website draped in Paine and Lynch backgrounds, video ads, and so forth. Problem was, the game wasn't very good, so one-time man of integrity and admittedly my personal least favourite of the GameSpot team at the time, Jeff Gerstmann, relayed as much in a video review that ended in a score of 6 out of 10. Honestly, in today's IGN world, isn't that actually a kind of okay score for what is essentially a kind of crappy game? I mean, above average, right? Not a total garbage fire. Well, IDOS took affront to some of Jeff's commentary and threatened to pull their profitable sponsorship and advertising from GameSpot's then owners, CNET. I remember the CNET buyout, also the subsequent CBS buyout. I also remember watching Jeff's review and, as the words left his mouth, saying, he's lost his job. GameSpot's lost their advertising. Honestly, I could see it written in the wind. And so it was that Jeff Gerstmann was ousted from the CNET-owned GameSpot, with the rest of the On the Spot team following him out the door soon thereafter. Now, it took some time for the truth to come out, but later on, after CBS had bought out CNET, it came to light that indeed IDOS had pressured CNET to get rid of Gerstmann, and frankly, CNET didn't care for anyone who felt this was in any way unjust for them to stay either. And I can't stress enough the almost overnight wave of change at GameSpot after this. We stopped watching ourselves, along with most people who saw credible gaming news and reviews, free from the sway of big money assholes who can't accept their product does not cut the mustard. Still, GameSpot continued, and continues even today. And Jeff Gerstmann and co. moved on, setting up Giant Bomb. Also mentioned in the McCarthy interview. They did this in an effort to escape the constrictions of the corporate structures and mutual backrubbing that had squashed them out of GameSpot. Perhaps this is the same structure Alyssa alluded to actually being more comfortable in during that interview with David Jaffe. Now, I admittedly did not follow Jeff and co. to Giant Bomb. The chemistry of that core GameSpot team just wasn't there. The very nature of the content expressly negated that, with a move to more individual personalities saying their pieces about a range of varying subjects. Often I found it was non-relative to gaming. I mean, whatever, it wasn't the same without Rich Gallup, Ryan Davies, rest his soul, and the whole team in one place razzing games like mates around the telly. Despite this, they soldiered on until 2012, when they were bought by CBS. Yes, the same CBS that were acquired by, that owned CNET even, sorry. The same CNET that squashed these guys at GameSpot, okay? Same people. I mean, at this stage, it kind of looks like there's a conscious move to try and keep them from being independent, or too independent at least. As if the corporate machine must own whatever they're doing at all costs. for Jeff continued there through the sale of Giant Bomb in 2020 to Red Ventures, owners of VentureBeat. And we'll come back to that in just one moment, as by June 6, 2022, Jeff Gerstmann was once again gone from the platform he had founded and contributed quite heavily towards building into a success over years. At this point, with almost 30 years in games journalism, a college qualification in journalism too, which in these days is a huge rarity, Jeff Gerstmann is once again fired. I reiterate, fired by the outlet he sunk his life into for the best part of more than half a decade. Sorry, a decade and a half even, actually. Now, once again, it took just a little time for the truth to come out, but Jeff does speak about it here in his video under his new independent venture of October 25th, 2022. And he talks about his departure along with that keyword again, access. Let's have a little listen to this.
Ben writes in, I kind of, maybe I already answered this, honestly. Ben in Boston writes in, says, since starting your new thing this year, what has changed about the access to games and companies that you get for preview and coverage? Are any aspects easier or more difficult? Anything that surprised you? I honestly thought it was going to be kind of more difficult to reach out to companies. This is more of a me thing. This is probably tied into some kind of fucking imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it, type of stuff. But there was a part of me that was just like, man, I got to reach out and contact companies all over again and give them a new contact details. Are they going to care about what I'm doing? Does it matter? All this sort of stuff. And it has not been a problem. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and yeah, so contacting companies, all that sort of stuff, like people were ready to be like, oh yeah, what do you need? And, in a way that, like, honestly, in the early going for this stuff was a really big load off my mind in terms of just like, okay, we're gonna be fine. This is gonna be fine. I'm gonna continue to do the stuff that I am known for doing. I don't think this is going to be a problem. There was I'll leave the names out of it, but there was an interaction I had when I went to Keeley's the Summer Games Fest in June that Jeff Keeley put on. When I went to that event, that I had literally been planning to go to as a part of my old job, and then suddenly was not, and so I had to then replan it as like, now I'm going by myself. Can I? And everyone was like, of course you can. Yes, of course. And so Keeley was probably one of the first person that made me feel very welcome as continuing to do this, which again, maybe sounds crazy to some people because I've been doing this for so long and all this other stuff, but like, it's a weird thing to have happen, right? Where you're like, oh shit, like I'm kind of starting from scratch and I'm kind of doing it on the run. It was something that I was like, maybe I'll do this in 3 or 4 weeks. And then suddenly it was like, oh, I guess this is happening right now. Okay. Shit. And then when I got there, I went to go see a game, and the person who was there handling PR is someone I've known, and a lot of people across it, but it doesn't mean you like are talking to them on a constant basis. This was someone, obviously, between the pandemic and just like not getting out as much, like this was someone I probably hadn't seen in like 3 years. And I saw him and just started, and he was like, man, what the fuck happened? And I kind of told him the story, and and he was like, well, fucking whatever you need, man. This whole industry has your back. And I was like, oh, hey, I guess you're kind of right. It was nice. Not to be emotional about it, but it was, again, at a time that felt very fragile, or felt very like, fuck, man, what the fuck just happened? Holy shit. So, oh, look, all right. So the thing that happened in broad strokes, is that I got fired 3 weeks before I was going to quit. And that's why a lot of this is so fucking has been very murky for the last several months, is because that stuff's been really weird. Because at one point I had an offer to go somewhere else, and then I was like, I don't think that's going to be the right move, which I think it ended up not being the right move. And all this other stuff. And so I was like trying to find a reason to stay at my current position. And at some point they just said, like, basically like, yeah, how about instead you wrap it the fuck up? And I was like, oh, word, okay, all right. And so I was planning to get to the other side of the E3 stuff and be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna go do my own thing and not do this anymore because I don't want to do this here. And I don't know what happened ahead of that. I don't know how this happened in the order that it did. But yeah, when I say I was planning to go to Keeley's thing as a part of my old job, I like was getting ready to start making appointments, and then suddenly it was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to respond to any of those emails ever again. Like, oh, huh, all right. And so it was a very weird thing. There was, it was like, there are aspects of that I will be angry about for a very long time. But it was just I don't know. It's a bad fucking fit. At the end of the day, just a bad fucking fit. And I gave it time to try to make it work, and it didn't. So, whatever. So, but like I said, this was all a few weeks before I was planning to just go anyway. And I was like, whatever, man. Like, I'll get out and do my own thing. I'm confident about it. I think it'll go really great. Like, I think it'll be, I'll be happier. It'll be all this other stuff. And then, all that stuff just kind of happened. And I was like, oh, weird. So yeah, just it was a fucking crazy bit of timing and all this other stuff. And I don't know. I still don't really know what happens, but yeah, so yeah, it was like I said, when I say it was a fragile moment, that's why, because it was just like, what the fuck is what is going on? Shit, man. But at the same time, like, yeah, the writing had been on the wall for some time that the things that I wanted to do with a video game publication were not going to happen there. So it is what it is.
Okay, and it is very interesting to hear his comments on Jeff Keighley there. And the more times I watch this, just to go off on a personal note for a second, look in his eyes, listen to his voice, the more times he's devastated. He's devastated at that point. I mean, he sunk, like I say, the best part of a decade and a half into this company, only for the same people essentially to come in, swoop in, and push him out. Like I say, I never particularly liked Jeff the most out of the bunch, but I could certainly respect his integrity when it came to the Paine and Lynch situation. But there you go, once again, there were unsurmountable constraints to the way they would let Jeff work there, and the ultimate consequence was that he had to walk away. And just they got to him first, because you can't quit, you're fired. There's a high likelihood, I would posit, that Jeff is one of the last remaining bastions of that old pre-2000/early 2000s guard who do have some sort of integrity left, along with enough backbone to push against the demands of the corporate ownership and their network of socially engineering creeps. Sadly for Jeff, he's not Jason Schreier or Stephen Toledo. Well, not anymore. I mean, arguably at one point he was at the top of the mountain with the GameSpot team, but as the rot set in across the industry and the developers and publishers became ever more intertwined with the journalists, critics and reviewers, he didn't evolve to become a team player for the Corpo team. So kick him out, buy him out, whatever method, we don't care, just get him gone. Now, Red Ventures came in and swept the boards clean. Out with the old, in with the new, and the new being inclusive of former VentureBeat staff. Former VentureBeat staff like, wait for it, Jeff Grubb. Now, you may know this guy possibly for being seen next to Check's notes Alyssa Mercante when she checks notes, encouraged anyone who disagrees with her interminably poor takes to engage in fisticuffs with her. Or perhaps you might know him from the even more recent incident of Jeff Grubb stealing scoops from Jeff at Smash JT and repurposing them for his own, only for the mass media at large to nope out on calling his ass out on it, rather seemingly just letting it pass. Now, maybe I should have called this tale a tale of three Jeffs. Damn. Anyway, Jeff Gerstmann is gone. Jeff Grubb is in. Jeff Grubb steals scoops from Jeff at Smash JT. The mass media champions Jeff Grubb. It's all just so, well, grubby. Now, through the course of all this, you will have seen the same names crop up over and over, CNET, CBS, etc. And I'd like to suffix all of this with a little look at Ziff Davis, who themselves feature prominently throughout the ownership history of almost every one of the various companies, publications, platforms, etc. that I've mentioned throughout this video. I'll leave links in the description if you want to go back and look at the various degrees of separation and or ownership over the years. But it's this point I raised at the top of the video about corporate hegemony of the gaming landscape, an ultimate vertical of everything from producer, developer to critic / media, all with a very small number of basically exact same people in persistent control. I often warn people of the assumed alt media. With some cursory digging, people can find that many of the top kids' YouTube gaming channels, for example, and others, are actually owned by companies like Pocket.Watch, a group part owned by Dr. Iron Man Doom himself, Robert Downey Jr., and others that include former Viacom entities. So essentially the legacy media, just under a funky cool new Gen Z branding, separated by just enough degrees of separation. And it doesn't stop with the kids' gaming videos, obviously, it's all over the place. Out there, somewhere, right now, there's a literal warehouse of cubes, each with another indie content creator's home studio in it, churning out content on the dime of rebranded legacy media. Don't underestimate it, look into it for yourself. Now, before we do wrap this up, let's just look at Ziff Davis's various ownerships, shall we? I'll have a little scroll down here, where you will find that they own currently CNET, Eurogamer, GamesIndustry.biz, Humble Bundle, IGN, PC Mag, VG247, and amongst all of those which are current ownerships somewhere lies Digital Foundry, home to that PC gamer journalist I mentioned earlier in the video. Have a look for yourself at all the other gaming related things they've owned, review their involvement in the sites I've mentioned in this video. You'll see it's the same old people doing the same old thing, and each time the access media wins. To take it back to the Alyssa Mercante comments, even Jason Schreier was supposed to have an Activision expose on the way recently, which totally disappeared after Microsoft acquisition. Jaffe mentions that you can push back against Schreier and Toledo. Perhaps this is an example of that. This all is of course until now. You see, the biggest problem for the corporate monolith today in 2025 is that independent content creators, who they are constantly blaming for the failures of their products. Whether it's games, film, TV, take your pick. Indeed, Jeff Gerstmann is one of these himself now, at least for now. Let's see if Ziff Davis managed to buy his house out from under him and sling him into the street. Hey, it could happen. They have tried every trick in the book to avoid their paying public having any sort of heads up on their product prior to launch, aggressively overselling and overpricing pre-orders and slapping embargoes on reviews right up to the day of release. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, if your product is good enough, it will sell itself, in spite of any underlying controversies even, as Nightmare Cart proved, well before the developer just took that success and immolated it in some sort of weird offering to the gods of woke. But if anyone is taking this many measures to ensure all you hear are good things about their product, like a stunning return to form, for example, then they are almost certainly hiding a substandard product every single time. And that's where independent citizen content creators cause the stink. They do the games master in all this. They spend money and purchase the games and review them honestly anyway. Who needs access? Because in tandem with this, the paying public has finally closed their wallets, tires of always being hucked out of their hard-earned cash for underwhelming politicised crap, and decided that they're willing to wait for those independent, frankly more open and honest reviews before taking the plunge on a new purchase. As they gain followers and subscribers through their reviews and content, developers and publishers escaping that corporate cult mentality begin to notice, and before long are, in some cases like Smash JT, sending information from the inside, or like Vara Dark, who had a smashing interview with Marek Tominsky, who clearly sought to engage more directly with the audience for his product, because he understands that these are the people who actually pay to play, unfiltered by multiple layers of six-figure PR and marketing sycophants, pruning out any negative feedback and ultimately steering multi-billion-dollar franchises into the dirt. He also clearly respected the honesty and integrity of his interviewer. So again, who needs this hallowed access of which Alyssa and Jeff Gerstmann speak? It just goes to show again that authenticity is the currency of the future. Much like I suggested in yesterday's video, the access to information on any given developer or publisher has reached such a point that the old methods of buy out, flush out and proselytize product no longer work as effectively as they once did. And defending a brand in this day and age is PR marketing cancer. But perhaps we are finally leaving the era of complete vertical control by singular, monolithic entities, so long as these independent voices staunchly remain so, funded by public donations, subscriptions, memberships, super chats, crowdfunding and the like. For the longer they do, the sooner that those that hold the keys will be forced to gobble down on heaps of humble pie, refocus and return to delivering high quality product, free from woke nonsense or unnecessary politics, and abound with fantastic stories bearing compelling characters and moving scenarios blended with beautiful artwork and assets running at smooth frame rates, and for a reasonable price. This has been my tale of two Jeffs, and let me conclude by saying this. Keep up the good work out there, all of you. That authentic future is in reach, and if we all work towards it, embracing that which brings us together, then we will eventually beat those who would rather tear us apart. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this content, and if you did, please leave a like and comment. If not, leave a dislike. Feel free to share on social media, and most of all, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be informed of my next video. This has been Bass Driver from Paine's Games. Thanks again for listening. Take care out there, and I'll catch you in the next one.